Hello and welcome to this week's presentation for Politics of Southeast Europe. We'll be talking about post-conflict political processes, retrenchment, and reconciliation. In this section, I am going to give an overview of the topics that we'll be considering as we discuss the theme. First, though, I want to make a note. A lot of what is discussed in talking about these processes is couched in terms of language like truth, justice, reconciliation. It is abstract terms that are apparently positive and that probably don't describe all of the processes that go on. And those of you with experience in the region will know that people do not respond well to the term reconciliation. They tend to reject it. They recoil at it. They regard it as an imposition, as something unreasonable, sometimes as something undesirable. Why do they do this? First of all, we want to talk about reconciliation. Hello, Stanislav. Um, in terms of the kind of postulates that it carries with it, first of all, it implies a postulate about the situation that preceded conflict that may or may not be true. That is, that there was a time of conciliation, that this conciliation was broken, that it's both possible and desirable to recapture it. All of these might be rejected. There are some further postulates that are imposed upon the people who were involved in conflict. In particular, a postulate that seems to imply that perpetrators and victims were in conflict with one another and need to reconcile with one another. This is a postulate that meets, for obvious reasons, with strong rejection on the part of a number of victims. A second reason that the term seems to be greeted with some hostility is that it seems to apply some abstract and idealized standards, mostly from outside, standards that are meant to be realized with a meaningful degree of outside political and practical pressure by states and by international institutions, powerful ones, that do not seem to apply these standards to themselves. So it appears as though there is a double standard that works to the detriment of states in the region and underlines unequal relations of power. Third, the thing about reconciliation is that it's one of those terms, like democratization, like transition, and so on, that implies an end goal that is undefined and that seems to infinitely recede into the future, so that it also implies a process of oversight and inadequacy without offering any ideas as to how this process can end. So we look at the term this way, it looks as though the situation is fairly bad. So we can ask the question, how did we get here? And where do we go from there? I'll be answering the first of those questions a lot more than the second of those questions. That is, I do not have a prescription about where we go, but I can talk about some of the things that are happening in the region and ideas that are developing about where to go with some of the flows of the process. So here is an outline of our presentation. First, we'll be talking about initiatives and institutions grounded in international criminal law and what these have achieved and what they have failed to achieve. Second, I'll be talking about the process of denial and how denial is more of a complex and in some ways more of a creative process than the term itself implies. Third, I'll be talking about responses to some of the dissatisfaction and frustration with initiatives that have been carried out and where some of these are pointing. And then finally, I'll be talking about some contemporary conflicts over public memory and what these might indicate. So we will pick up by talking about international criminal law initiatives in the next segment of this presentation.